Now, there has been some concern that the erupting volcano in Iceland will hit the capital city with its fumes and ash. But I think that's where it's going to stay, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one they're monitoring very, very closely, the seismologists up there. At the moment, it's looking unlikely that those fumes are going to waft their way towards Reykjavik. And actually, the weather charts indicate that over the next sort of 24, 48 hours or so, winds, if anything, Jake, are going to be blowing in the opposite direction offshore, which actually is a reason why Reykjavik is going to turn bitterly cold over the next couple of days. That's good news for Reykjavik because it does mean that the winds are blowing off the interior and pushing those fumes further away from the capital. Obviously, winds this time of year particularly can be quite fickle, and it's something to be keeping a very close eye on. And it could well be that over the next week or so, the winds could well switch and we see those fumes heading back towards the capital. But at the same time, of course, this particular eruption is weakening at the moment. Whether the eruption continues to weaken is anyone's guess. And I think the seismologists will be pretty frank with you and say that it could well be that further vents will open up quite randomly over the next few days, and it's very hard to predict exactly where or when that might happen. But yeah, the good news is twofold at the moment. A, the eruption is weakening at the moment, and the amount of gases and the amount of lava being ejected into the air is lessening. And secondly, from a meteorological atmospheric point of view, for the next couple of days at least, it does look as if the winds are going to push those fumes further away from the capital rather than towards Reykjavik.
And for our viewers at home, they can see live pictures of this extraordinary eruption. It will bring back to people's minds that in 2010, the volcano Keflavik erupted and grounded all the planes. They're laughing here in the studio. I think that was quite a good effort, that. Grounded all the planes coming to and from the UK for several days. In fact, I think it went on for weeks. Is there any danger whatsoever that that will happen in relation to this volcano?
In a word, no. The volcano back then, beginning with E, I'm not going to attempt to actually pronounce it, but yeah, that one back in 2010 erupted underneath hundreds of meters of ice. It erupted underneath a glacier, and that had the effect of actually propelling ash miles up in the atmosphere and got caught up in the jet stream, which then transported that ash cloud across Western Europe. By stark contrast, as you can see in the footage right now, there is no huge ash eruption taking place. It's just lava which is being propelled, let's say, hundreds of meters up in the air and then falling back down to Earth again. Very different beast seismologically, and there are no indications that this eruption is going to transform itself into what we saw in 2010, which is good news. So, you know, Reykjavik Airport is open for business right now, and there are no indications that it's going to close. And flights in and out of Iceland shouldn't be affected at all over the next few days.
OK, well, people can see it live on our screen. It is a different type of eruption. Well, hopefully, if people want to get home for Christmas using aeroplanes, then they won't be disrupted. Also, we've got Storm Pia piling in to the UK. It's not actually going to hit the UK, but we are going to be hit by very heavy wind and rain, particularly over the north of our country over the next couple of days, aren't we?
Yeah, particularly the wind, actually, Jake. We could well see a storm surge. Now, I don't know, the older viewers amongst us might remember a historic storm surge which hit the East Coast back in the early 50s and caused horrendous flooding and some loss of life. It's not going to be as bad as that, but it's a similar sort of mechanism. In other words, a deep area of low pressure pushing the water down the North Sea. Now, the one back in the early 50s coincided with a very high spring tide, and that's what caused all that flooding. Thankfully, we've not got high spring tides at the moment, though there will be a storm surge of some 1 metre or so, and that will cause some flooding down the East Coast. So that is something which we are aware of, and the emergency forces will be keeping an eye on over the next couple of days. The worst of the winds will be Thursday, but the impacts could last into Friday. More widely, as you say, across northern Britain, very windy. We're going to see gusts quite widely of 40, 50 miles an hour. In the exposed parts of northern Scotland, we could well reach 80 miles an hour. Now, that will have impacts on travel in the run-up to Christmas. Thankfully, the worst of the winds will subside towards the end of the week. And actually, Jake, Christmas weekend looks a lot quieter, chillier.
Well, John, that brings me on to my final question for you, what everyone wants to know, particularly as they think about getting away. What my children would like to know is, are we going to get a white Christmas in many parts of the United Kingdom?
We're all kids at heart, aren't we, Jake? And Yeah, I mean, I think some places could well see snow, but those places are likely to be the high ground of primarily Scotland. There's a small chance that Northern England, the Pennines, for example, could see a bit of the white stuff, but further
Hopefully we
south...
get a bit in Rosendale. John, thank you so much.